Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey, everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese. Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you two short stories. The first story is titled Tang. There was a man named Tang who had once passed the imperial examination. One year, Tang suddenly fell seriously ill, and at the moment of death, he felt a warm sensation rising from the lower part of his body. As the warmth ascended to his thighs, he sensed that his lower legs were dead. When the warmth reached his abdomen, he could feel that his thighs had also perished. Finally, as the warmth ascended to the chest, he discovered that the heart was the most reluctant to die. Childhood memories and countless forgotten experiences flooded back like a tide along with the rising warmth, and with each recollection of a virtuous deed, he felt a sense of purity and tranquility. However, every recollection of a misdeed filled his heart with remorse and agitation, akin to the sensation of being fried in hot oil, an indescribable torment. Reflecting on the time when he was 7 or 8 years old and had once explored a bird's nest, delighting in killing the chicks, this single act made the blood in his heart surge like a tide, lasting until about the duration of a meal before slowly calming down. In the end, he recounted all his life's actions, and only when he felt the warmth passing through his throat did he realize that it had permeated his brain, then emerged from the top of his head like a wisp of smoke rising. After about another 2 hours, Tang felt his soul leaving his body. Tang spirit floated aimlessly in the air, homeless and adrift, unconsciously drifting outside the city. At this moment, he saw a giant approaching. This giant was about 12 meters tall, and he picked up Tang spirit, placing it in his sleeve. Once inside the sleeve, Tang spirit discovered many others present. These people were cramped shoulder to shoulder, and the air inside the sleeve was extremely stale, making it unbearably stuffy, an experience Tang could not endure. Suddenly, Tang remembered that invoking the Buddha could bring relief in times of peril, so he began reciting Amitabha Buddha. After uttering only 3 or 4 chants, his spirit floated out of the giant's sleeve, falling to the ground. The giant immediately picked up his soul again. This process repeated 3 times, with Tang soul falling 3 times due to his recitation of Buddhist scriptures. In the end, the giant seemed somewhat annoyed, stopped picking up his soul, and left. Tang spirit remained alone there, not knowing where to go. Thinking that the Buddha was in the west, he drifted in that direction. Before long, Tang saw a monk meditating by the roadside. He approached, bowed, and asked for guidance. The monk said to him, "The life and death records of scholars are overseen by the Emperor of Literary Merit and the sage Confucius, who govern education. You must first go to them to have your name removed before leaving the underworld for elsewhere." Tang then inquired about the abodes of Emperor Wenchang and Confucius. The monk provided detailed directions, and Tang headed in the direction indicated by the monk. Not long after, Tang Pin arrived at the temple of Confucius. He saw Confucius sitting facing south, and just as he did when alive, Tang Pin knelt and paid his respects to Confucius. Confucius said to him, "The changes in the life and death registry still fall under the jurisdiction of Emperor Wenchang. Go find him." Following this advice, Tang Pin hurriedly proceeded to find Emperor Wenchang. As he floated along, a grand palace appeared before him, resembling an emperor's palace. Lowering his head respectfully, he entered the magnificent building, where indeed a celestial being was seated. The appearance of this celestial being was identical to the emperor of literary merit he had seen in the mortal world. Tang Pin prostrated himself on the ground and devoutly prayed to the celestial being. Emperor Wenchang, aware of Tang Pin's purpose, examined the registry and said, "You are an honest and virtuous person, deserving to return to the mortal world. However, your body has already decayed. Besides Guanyin Bodhisattva, no one can help you." Emperor Wenchang then pointed Tang Pin in the direction to urgently seek Guanyin Bodhisattva. Tang Pin followed the instructions. While on his way, he suddenly encountered a lush forest of trees and bamboo, concealing a splendid palace within. Upon entering, he saw Guanyin Bodhisattva seated inside, with a hairstyle resembling a snail shell, displaying a dignified demeanor. Her golden face radiated beauty like a full moon. In a precious vase before the Bodhisattva, willow branches were inserted, their leaves gracefully hanging, lush and green like smoke. Tang Pin respectfully bowed to Guanyin Bodhisattva, conveying the message from Emperor Wenchang. Guanyin Bodhisattva expressed her difficulty in resolving the matter. Tang Pin pleaded incessantly. A nearby arhat said to the Bodhisattva, "Bodhisattva, you can use your magical powers, gather some mud as flesh, and break willow branches for bones." Guanyin Bodhisattva agreed to the request, personally breaking off willow branches from the vase and pouring out some water from the vase. She mixed the willow branches and water to form mud. Guanyin Bodhisattva then applied the willow branches and mud to Tang Pin's body. An attendant immortal was tasked with returning him to the place where the coffin was stored and pushing his soul back into the body. At this moment, Tang Pin inside the coffin emitted moans and sounds of movement. Tang Pin's family, astonished, gathered around the coffin. Opening the coffin, they found Tang Pin completely healed. Calculating, it had been exactly 49 days since Tang Pin's apparent death. The second story is titled, Begging Monk. In Jinan Prefecture, there was a monk, and the local people didn't know where he came from. The monk walked barefoot every day, wearing tattered robes, reciting scriptures and seeking alms at venues like the Hibiscus Pavilion and Ming Lake. People offered him food, money, and grains, but he refused them all. When asked what he wanted, he remained silent. No one had ever seen him eat. Some advised the monk, "Since you don't eat meat and drink wine, you should go to desolate villages and alleys for alms." Why bother coming to these noisy places every day? But upon hearing this, the monk would close his eyes and recite scriptures, with eyelashes over an inch long, as if he hadn't heard the advice. After a while, someone brought up the matter again. The monk suddenly opened his eyes and sternly said, "I want to beg for alms here." Then he resumed reciting scriptures without responding to further inquiries. After a long period of recitation, the monk left on his own. Some people followed him and repeatedly asked why he chose to beg in this manner, but the monk kept walking forward, silent and unresponsive. Despite repeated questioning, he sternly said, "This is not something you should know. I, the old monk, choose to beg in this way." A few days later, the monk suddenly left through the south city gate. He lay stiff by the roadside, not eating, drinking, or moving for 3 days and nights. Concerned that he might starve to death and affect the nearby residents, people gathered around to persuade him to leave. They offered him food and money if he agreed to depart. However, the monk remained with his eyes tightly closed and made no movement. The residents shook his body, urging him to leave. Enraged, the monk pulled out a short knife from his robe, cut open his own belly, and inserted his hand inside, arranging his intestines on the road until he eventually passed away. Terrified, the onlookers reported the incident to the authorities, who hastily buried the monk. After a few days, wild dogs dug a hole in the monk's grave, revealing the burial cloth covering the body. People cautiously stepped on it and found the cloth seemed empty. Upon opening it, they discovered that the wrapped corpse was intact, but the body was gone, resembling an empty cocoon. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tales. Tang Pin and Begging Monk. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.